Thank you for joining us on Worldwide Slotcar Chat on Zoom, number 134. I'm your host, Greg Gabb. The gang is all here. We got Tony and Alan and Paul and John and Mike and Jim and Garth and Big Dan and Jerry and Scott and Martin and other people, and we're going to talk slot cars. As usual, we'll start with show and tell. So if you have something to show and or tell, please raise your virtual hand so that I don't forget to call on you. Since I don't see, oh, wait, there's the virtual hand. Okay, anybody else raise your virtual hand? Otherwise, you can go like this, or
I've got a real hand.
Okay, I'll try to not forget you, Paul. Let's start with Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, let's see here. Everybody knows we've got a Christmas Enduro coming up at Electric Dreams in less than a month now, so I'm getting prepared. I've built 3 cars for myself and 2 cars for another guy, so this is the stable we're going to go down with and start testing this weekend at one of our local tracks. So we're getting ready for this Enduro, and we're taking it kind of seriously. So we'll see how we do. And I think I mentioned before, it's a GT40 NSR spec Enduro, but I'm running a Mercury. And I got the decals from IndyCals. This is a 67 Mercury GT40. It was driven by AJ and Gurney at the Daytona 24 Hours in 67. So I'm going a little offbeat and going with a Mercury. And since it's a Christmas Enduro, this is probably going to be my race car. So you got to have a green chassis and a red motor pod and a red body. So I'm in the spirit with a Christmas Enduro. Even though the Martinis are there in the background, the other red car is the one they ran at Le Mans. So it's very similar to the Daytona Mercury. It just says Ford on the side of it. So that's been my week trying to I've got 4 cars built and a spare chassis for myself and one other team. So a lot of work. So we're doing some interesting stuff, and we'll see how it works when we get down there.
I forget, is that going to be a 24-hour or 12 or?
It's a 3-hour.
3 hour.
Yeah, it's a short Enduro. There were 2 24 hours last weekend. I don't know if anybody went to the one at Tacoma, and then we had an HO 24-hour in Escondido the same weekend. So lots of racing going on.
I heard from some of the guys in my club about the 24. I did not go because 3 hours is about as much Enduro as I could handle, and that's with like a 6-man team. So
one of the guys I talked to that went to the HO Enduro, he ran an 1.5-hour stint, but just like in real racing, they double stinted him, so he ran 3 hours.
Ouch.
So I couldn't do that. Anyway, that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Jim. And Paul waved his hand and has his virtual hand up, so I'll let you go this time, Paul.
Right. I've ordered this when I was away on holiday. I ordered this before at the 6-hour race. It's the new case from True Speed. And it's now going to be, if I can open it, that's my Sonoco case.
Oh, angel
12,
noises.
Oh, it's 12 cars. It is really well done. It's well put together.
Nice.
Is the foam on the top squishy, or is it all that hard?
Yeah, it holds all the cars in place. So
nice.
you can, so as soon as it goes up right, they don't move.
Nice.
So yeah, nice little present to come back to.
How much is that? How much are they selling those for?
£79. That includes all the trays and everything.
Wow. Okay.
If you don't want the so you can actually take the trays out and the dividers, and you can actually put your controllers in one side, cars the other side.
Oh. Yeah. Who's got space for controllers? That has to be separate, right? I mean, we've all got far more cars than we need, but we've probably only got 2 controllers.
Yeah.
Does it feel pretty sturdy? Because Carrera, I've seen cases like that from like Carrera and Ninco, and they always seemed a little flimsy to me.
No, this is all aluminium. It's
that almost looks like it's based on a photography case of some sort, because it looks really sturdy.
Is that the Carrera one, Alan?
That's the Carrera one, but it was laid out as John's with the cars flat, and I didn't like that. I wanted to be able to carry it this way up.
Oh.
So it's a 24th, supposed to be a 24th scale case. I have 2 of these for 2 different clubs. I've had different case for different clubs. So I rejigged it all so that the cars sit horizontally rather than sitting flat, which I don't really like the idea of. So this works well, but I would say that the comment about it being flimsy, that's true, because although it looks like aluminium, you've got this nice coating, it's actually just 3-ply. And the hinges can be a bit flaky. Actually, is this the one? One of these is all taped up because the hinges failed on it. Yeah, they can be a bit flaky, and especially if you when you need to put them in the club or whatever, and you're using them all the time, they can break apart. But it's a great way to have all your cars stored and just a grab and go situation.
Yeah, I love the stickers, Alan. I think they're really cool.
I've got some better than others. I mean, let's see if I've got one that I can show you. That I've had some. Oh, that's one. Ace Cafe, London. That's one of my favourites. That's on it's a big car and motorbike cafe that goes back to the 1960s, and it's on my mountain bike route, just on the Grand Union Canal in North London. So that's it. Plus a whole load of skateboard stuff from my brother-in-law. Yeah. And it's always good and the obligatory gas monkey one.
There you go.
Various stuff. It's always good to do.
Good stuff.
This is my old pit box from when I was racing, and that is absolutely plastered.
Yeah.
I haven't done any to my new boxes. I want to get a Slotcar sticker for that though. I'd like to stick a big Slotcar sticker on that.
Yeah. Well, I never really got into the idea of building a box, going down to the timber merchants and getting 5-ply or 3-ply and making a beautiful box and varnishing it. Just because I want to spend my time and money on prepping cars, not prepping boxes.
Paul's got a guy.
My local, he's only around the corner. He's my local cabinet maker, and he's made. This is a smaller version of the big ones.
Okay.
It's all properly. It's all tongue and grooved. He's actually got. If I can get the drawer out, hold on. He's got a special tongue and groove mount in it, which is called. I don't know if you can see that. That middle one is called a London Dove because of the size, how small it is.
Okay.
I can't even see it.
Oh, hold on.
So small we can't see
it. Okay.
See it there?
Yeah, it's teeny.
But yeah, and it's all French polished. It is. I took my box in, my one I just showed earlier, and I said to him, what's something similar to that?
Hey, Greg, didn't you 3D print a Sunoco sign?
Sorry?
I was actually going to suggest that I could do a 3D printed sign for Paul.
Oh, that's nice.
But that would have thickness, and it might cause other issues. So.
Oh no, I can drill through it or pop rivet through it. It's a solid old piece of kit.
Now, there's one guy down at Molesey called Josh Bryant. Josh turns up with something I wouldn't call a pit box. I'd call it an engineering station. He's got lights, he's got tools, he's got power, everything. He opens that thing up and it's like a Formula One garage in there. Everything you need. He's got a tire through it, everything you need. And I look at that sometimes and think, okay, maybe the right pit box is a technical advantage. And he does have everything in there. It's amazing. So maybe at some point I will get something made. Maybe.
That's like there's a chap at our club called Ron Lane, and he has got that. It's unreal. His pit box, it just opens up and got all the lights. He's got the light beam that can come out and go back in to see what he's doing.
Yeah.
Mental.
Whereas I don't, apart from my car box, you guys are probably going to laugh at. This is what I turn up to a club with.
It's a straight up toolbox.
It's a straight up toolbox, and I've got 2 of these things in it with various pieces, and my controllers go in there, and various chemicals and sprays, and that's a lot. Again, I just didn't see the value in spending money on a box and spending my time. I would spend my time on the cars or the throttles and things.
Well, that cost me the actual storage unit itself cost me 400 quid. The boxes were 100 quid each. The little one was 70 quid each. And I've got another 2 of those big boxes up in the garage for what my granddaughter's got her cars in.
Okay.
So, but he's done well out of me, I think.
Yeah.
Keeping him in business.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thanks for showing those cases, gentlemen. Let's move on to Big Dan. What you want to share today, Big Dan?
Oh, track is clear.
Yeah.
I've got to be, I've got to be woken up out of my stupor. Hello, everyone. I'll just do a bit of a share here, or I'll attempt a bit of a share to start with, as they say. Share. And how are you going there now? We got one?
Yep.
Okay. So the Revo slot Datsun 510. Somebody said they'd sell 1 million of these. So Jim, just a few to go. I think it was Jim who said it. And what I did, I started off with the Arri Micro Ace kit, which I'd had for eons. There's a better look at the box art. There's the body painted up. I thought, everyone in the world's going to do the BRE colours, so I went for another colour scheme for a chap called Rob Dyson, who was had I think a Grand Am Daytona prototype team at one stage. So I would love to have had the decals, but they're going to arrive today, I think. So next time around, maybe I'll show the fully deckled car. Just a few different views of the car. And what I did, because the wheelbase is not correct, you can see I've drilled an extra set of holes so I could move the front plate on the thing forward. And just a closer look at that. Pardon my lack of precision engineering, but I don't have any, I don't have a box with an engineering station in it like Alan's mate, so very, very, very rudimentary. That's just set up as I've decided to try and use a softer motor to start with, depending on the track I'm running on, but this can all be restored to the original Escort wheelbase just by changing the screw mountings. Because of my lack of precision, I'm actually using a smaller nut and bolt on the back mounting hole, so I get a little bit of chassis float or flex. And there's just a closer look up of where the extra holes are drilled. Now, I found out that Revo actually releases these, and they're a little insert that goes inside your 3mm ball bearings, so you can reduce it to a 3/32 axle size.
Oh, really?
Which I've actually done there. And the wheels on the back of that are the wheels are on a 3/32 axle. I think it's got an Avant slot angle cut gear on it. They are polycar wheels. They've got a little bit more width and diameter than the Revo ones that comes with the kit. So that's as you can see, there's a bit of a works in progress. It hasn't hit the track yet, so maybe next time I'm on, or we've got a meeting on, I can show you that how it goes in living, breathing colour. The other thing I'm a little bit disappointed in, just before the show, Alan actually guessed my password. ABC123. How did you do that, Alan? Oh, I don't know. Okay, that's me for now anyway.
I got some tech advice for you later, Big Dan.
Oh,
All right. Does anybody else have any show and tell? I don't see Chris on. Go ahead, Alan.
I do if we got a moment here.
Okay, Alan waved his real hand, then we'll get to you, Brian.
Okay.
he's muted.
Yeah, I had to mute him because he was making noise earlier.
I'm muting myself. Come on, stop it. Okay, right. What have I been doing? Went down to a swap meet last weekend. that's the Orpington swap meet, and the traders there relieved me of some of my money. One of the things I got there was a new NSR F1 car, which one of my club mates said, "What, the Haas Beatrice, that never won a damn thing ever. So why'd you get that?" So I've been prepping it, and I think I'm fairly confident that's going to win. So actually, this is already one car I've been testing out, which has got a King 30 in it, urethane tires and things for a Slotcar. And I just took the body off it that I had before, which was the homemade JPS black and gold livery, and then I dropped this one on, and then the car, that the chassis and running gear under this will be used for a different club. One of the things I won this year was Group C down at Wood Green, which was right to the wire, right to the last thing. Derek Moore, if he'd have won the last meet, he'd have pipped me to it, but he didn't pip me to it. So this was a white kit body I had a long time ago, and fitted to a chassis that I won in a kind of a competition or something. So it was a real chuck it together, rough and ready car, but it really worked well, and it's good. So I thought it won me the championship, so I thought it deserved an update. So Phil Smith, one of the traders down at Orpington, was selling Group C bodies for £15. It had a whole load of them, loads of Porsches, and I thought, rather than my home painted, fairly rudimentary thing, I thought I'll make something a bit prettier for next year. So this is going to be my contender for next year. The only question for me is, I know that everyone's going to be buying the Jag XJ10, so whether this can still do the job against those, we'll see. And what else did I get? This car I bought a while back from Phil Smith, one of the traders, Scale Auto Radical. And this was one of the cars that I'd been pursuing, which was one of John Secchi's cars. So I've only really just got round to figuring out the Radical, because it's different from everything else I race. It's an inline, which is not typical, but this is it. But when I came to use it, it broke the guide post hole, which is a bit of a pain because you can't get these chassis anymore. However, one of my club mates down at London Slotcar, Michael, found this for me. It's a 3D printed version.
That's the cat
so
one.
Sorry?
It's the cat one. That's what I've got under mine.
Yeah. I don't know if it's any good, but I'm just going to give it a go and see whether I can recommend. So you race that? You'd recommend that chassis?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
It's
it's
a nice handle.
And apart from that, I've just been prepping for Eindhoven, which we're going to be doing early next year, January, February. And as part of that, this weekend, Stanborough are running an open GT practice session. So that's 1.5 hours, a 3-hour race. So getting that together with the guys. So Mark Long and myself have been figuring out which car we're going to use, and then we'll figure that out. And we've got cars we've got to prep for the whole of next year, because there's the Oxygen Digital Series, which is a new thing for next year. There are going to be 6 events around the country, endurance racing Oxygen. So that's a good thing. We'd really like to go in there and make a good showing. So talking about which cars we're going to use and prepping the cars is a big deal. So that's what I've been busy with. That's it for me.
Hey, Alan, will it be your first visit to Eindhoven?
Yeah, it will, Wayne. Yeah.
You'll have a great time, I'm sure.
Sure.
I should say, we'll have a great time.
Which is the track? What track is at Eindhoven again?
Suzuka.
That's the Suzuka. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, great looking track. All right.
6 lanes of Ninko digital. It's a behemoth. It's not as large as some of the ones Alan's raced on with us, but yeah, it's respectable.
All right, Brian's ready to share. I'm going to spotlight you. Go ahead, Brian.
All right, so I decided I wanted to try and do an angle winder chassis here. So when I first started this, I found an angle winder pod online on Thingiverse. And I wanted the pod so I had an idea of what the spacing for the motor to axle ratio was. So I went ahead and I just printed the pod itself. And at the time I was using a scale auto car for the donor parts, and I was using it because I was doing some chassis repair on it. So I had the guts out. So I figured I would test fit. Wasn't even close to gear meshing. I looked up the specs on the scale auto. I guess the crown is a 15.2 millimeter, and they said the spur was supposed to be like a 6.75 or a 15.8 and a 6.75. Well, I mic'd those, and the spur was only like a 15.2, and the pinion was only like a 6.3. So whatever, things were obviously off. I ended up moving the motor like 0.7 of a millimeter closer to the axle, and it worked. It meshed fine. And then I started looking. I have no experience really with angle winders. I own a few, but I've never built one. And I noticed a lot of difference in sizes on pinions and gears on this. So when I redid this one, I have some racers, sideways racers, which use the slotted parts. And actually, I think I have a slotted, couple slotted McLarens that are angle winders. And I noticed their gear sizes are much different. So this one now is set up to use a 16 crown. Well, actually, it's not a crown. What do they call it? Spur gear, I'm sorry. And then like a 6.5 millimeter pinion. Now, the question is, I noticed there's, the difference between some of the manufacturers is a 0.5 millimeter on this, 1/4 millimeter on this, on the pinion. The spur might be a little bit big. For you guys who've used these before, how much variance do you have there? I mean, I know you can change the mesh by moving the pinion in and out, the spur gear in and out, but I mean, what's an acceptable range? So for example, this is set up for a 16 6.5. Could I go to a 16.5 and still run a 6.5? Do I have enough room in there to move the gears to still allow for a proper mesh?
I think it depends on if you're doing straight gears or angle cut gears.
Well, an angle winder, they're all angle cut, right? Or
no, you can run straight gears on an angle winder. I'm waiting. So we don't have Chris or Dennis, so I'm waiting for Alan or Wayne.
Yeah, Chris will tell you that it makes zero advantage to use angle gears, but I would say to you that Giovanni of Thunderslot and formerly of NSR advocates angle cut gears for angle winders, and all the Moslers are sold that way. You're talking about what you're talking about here is taking liberties with the design of the gear and the position of the motor in order to kind of get the gearing you want and get it to work. And Greg hit it exactly right. It depends on what you're going to do with it. It's not just the angle winder gear or the straight cut gear. It is, are you doing 3-minute races or are you doing 6-hour races? If you're using 3-minute,
I'm just a guy who mess around at the house, so we're not talking a competition level car here.
In that case, you can pretty much get away with anything. I mean, the slot car manufacturers take liberty with the whole modulus of the gear anyway. If you think about what that means to have a gear that is the same diameter, say a crown, and on that same diameter crown, you can have 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31 teeth on the same diameter crown from a single manufacturer.
Right. I get that.
And they're taking liberties with what will and won't work anyway. But for mooching around the house or even for sprint racing, most of it's okay. It's fine. It's only when you get into the enduros that it brute up the gears will be ripped to pieces unless they're properly set up. So I would say yes, I've taken lots of liberties with gears in the past, and I've mixed gear manufacturers, and I've used gears that are out of the perfect modulus, and I've spaced them with an angle winder. So I push the back wheel out a little bit, or I use a rear wheel that could be pushed in a little bit by using a wheel that's not got such a large boss. And you can make it all work. You can even cut into the motor mount and slide the motor around before you clamp it down and glue it. So yeah, for doing these things around the house, I wouldn't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Like do whatever you figure out.
Like I said, I understand the concept. Like for example, with sidewinders, as long as, you know, you add the pinion diameter and the spur gear diameter, and as long as you maintain that number, you can change the sizes between the two. You can go up 0.5 millimeter on the spur, you go down 0.5 millimeter on the pinion type thing. Does that still apply to angle winders? That same kind of concept?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't,
Okay.
because you've got the opportunity to slide the spur towards the bush and away from the bush.
Or the pinion up further or closer to the motor.
Well, so then would you say, yes, it applies, but it's not a requirement? Because when you're running a sidewinder, you kind of have to maintain that, or it's not going to work well.
Yeah,
But you're saying with a sidewinder, you've got a little room because I can move the pinion in and out. I can move the spur in and out.
Yeah, you've got more flexibility than a normal straight sidewinder would normally give you.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the original question was, how much variability would you say is typically there? A millimeter?
Usually, no, there's no hard and fast regulate. Usually there's enough to achieve what you need to achieve with a reasonable range of the pinion gears. If you go to the huge pinion gears like 15 and 14 teeth, and they are manufactured correctly, they're up at 8 millimeters plus in diameter. And at that point, you really have to start thinking about your choice of spur gear and how you're going to mount the motor. If you've got a modern slotted angle winder motor mount, you'll see
that's just say for the sake of what you're saying, that's what this is. This is set up to use slotted.
Yes.
16 millimeter spur, 6.5 millimeter pinion.
Well, if you go to anything that's a bigger pinion than that, and you won't because of the size of your circuit, but we do because of the size of the big tracks that we race in digital, then we will go down on the crown gear, spur gear, down to like 15 millimeters rather than the 16 to give us room for that larger diameter pinion. And what I was going to say is the current crop of slotted motor mounts for angle winder have actually got the facility to elongate the motor mounting screw holes. They aren't like that as they come out of the packet. There's a straight 2 millimeter hole. But if you look closely at the hole where the screw goes, there is actually some material already removed so that it makes it very easy to elongate the hole there. And that allows you to swing the pinion end of the motor fore and aft to change the mesh.
Got that. Okay. See, I said angle winder, it's a slightly different beast than everything else. So I probably should have done a little more research before I did the first one. So I would have known more. So I kind of found out about, holy crap, this isn't even close, simply by trial and error. It works pretty well now. I don't have any angle winder gears. So I never heard about using a sidewinder gear, which I have, so I might. The chassis ran well. I tried to incorporate, I know everybody likes to use that tube in the back to stiffen things up. So I actually did.
Have you managed to print that all in the pod in one piece?
Yeah, no, the pod's a single piece.
That's neat.
It looks like this.
I like the fact that it's got the axle tube in there.
Yeah, and that's not tolerance to the axle. It's much bigger than the axle, so it's serving purely as a stiffener, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, I think I made it this first one, I think I've made that hole a little smaller since then. I think I made the whole tube a little smaller because I ended up having to move things around. I think I don't know if these two are slightly different. You see the tube's a little smaller on the one that's actually on the chassis now.
Yes.
But it's still, it doesn't touch the axle at all. I think it's 3.5 millimeter hole there.
One of the assumptions you made when you were designing and printing this is that you assumed that these things would fit. And what I've learned is you have to go in with a position of assuming that nothing will fit. And if you assume that, for example, no axles are the same, no gears are the same, no manufacturer uses the same hole size for the guides, no manufacturer uses the same wheel sizes, wheel width, nothing about between Slotted and NSR and between Black Arrow and all these other manufacturers of Scalextric. Just assume as a going in position it won't fit, and that you have to make special case of measure everything, and then you may have a chance of building something.
Well, I got there and I did exactly what you did. I just assumed that this pod would be things that I had would fit, and it probably would have. If I'd have taken the gears off of a different car, it may have fit. But like I said, at the moment, my donor car was a scale auto, which tends to use a smaller spur gear than everybody else. And the pinion was smaller than spec'd, according to their website. So, I mean, I got it to work. It works. The other thing I noticed, and I don't know if this is common, and I saw this when I first got these cars, a lot of them, they run that spur gear right on the very end of the pinion. You know, common sense to me, my brain says it should be ideal would be somewhere in the middle of the pinion gear. But more often than not, they're running right at the edge of that pinion gear. And I'm not talking the skinny NSR ones that are barely wider than the spur gear. I'm talking, you know, the full depth gears.
That's true. Paul was holding one up. We couldn't see it because we were focused on Brian. Do you want to do
Pull
that
that
again?
car up again, Paul. Yeah, those are angle cut. It's an angle cut spur and a straight pinion.
There's no such thing as a pinion that's made for angle winder. They're all the same.
Yeah. Well, Ninco.
Yeah, Ninco. Yeah, with that exception. But yeah, it's typical to run on the outside edge of the pinion, and I find that in my case, I've had occasion where the end of the motor shaft on the tire wall have become an interference with one another.
I was going to say that the one of the reasons I think is that if you pull the pinion out more in order to have the mesh be in the center of the pinion, you're more likely to have the pinion rubbing against the tire, the inside of the tire or the wheel.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's not enough space. Anyways, you have to push the pinion in or trim the tire. Yeah, NSR use those really narrow pinions too.
Yeah, a little harder to see on that one.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to report the chassis does work.
We noticed that there is no pocket for a magnet in there. That's neat.
No, there isn't. And the other thing I did is I tried to keep the areas on the pod very clean. So very easy to add weight. Nothing has to be ground away. I'm actually, when I print this again, I'll print it with a set of templates that'll be the exact size of those openings, both front and rear. So I'll be able to just trace it out on the lead and cut them out, and they should fit perfect.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but I'm not great at cutting the lead. So having something where I can actually trace it out, and then I found a very sharp knife works very well for slicing through it. Just kind of press it through.
I've got to say there are several schools of thought on the merit or otherwise of adding lead to a motor pod. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't work for a lot of people, because it clearly does. A lot of people do it, but there is a school of thought that says that the motor pod should be as light as possible.
Yep. Now, what I found, both the angle winders and the side winders, I have converted more cars to non-mag. I'm sticking primarily with the potted ones right now, that I'm doing that with. And they tend to need little or no lead. I typically may put a little up front to help keep the nose down. That depends. But a lot of the cars, especially the Slottits, don't seem to need a whole lot of weight to make them run well. The one thing
Brian, have you tried measuring the front to rear weight distribution?
No, I haven't. I do it all by the seat of the pants. If it's running well, you know, I pretty much leave it alone. Now, I wanted to show you this, because what does that look like there?
Can't bring it closer to the camera. I can't. Oh, that
looks like a magnet.
That's a tungsten weight, right?
No, it is the original magnet from the car.
Did you kill it?
I killed it.
How'd you kill it?
Okay, this is going to seem so crazy.
Oven.
All it takes is a cigarette lighter.
Okay, heat. Yeah.
Yeah,
but the magnetism comes back.
I don't know how it would.
I guess I didn't heat it long enough.
You see, the motor is definitely there.
Yeah. So how many grams is that magnet with? How many grams is the magnet itself?
It's probably a gram, maybe 1.5 grams. So
the tungsten replacement's 2.5 grams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's probably only
definitely be more. But this might be a perfect idea if you wanted to just put a little weight over the axle, where the tungsten might be too much.
It's another tool in the box, isn't it? It's another option.
Yep, and it's free.
Yeah,
because it's already there. The other place I thought it might be helpful, Mike, I don't know, have you gone non-mag on any of your Carrera cars?
Yeah.
See, that might be an idea where, you know, they've got those long pockets there. Demagnetize that, you can put them back in. So you've got the weight, some weight, but you don't have the magnetic effect.
Yeah.
Is that opinion?
That might be a good idea, except that, you know, you're sort of restricted by the weight then. And I find that you need to adjust the weight accordingly.
Yeah,
that's why I asked if you measured it, because if you look for a 60-40 rear to front proportion, you can change it right away out of the box and just know exactly where you're at, rather than just guessing.
Well, but again, if you're not using the magnet anyways,
true,
demagnetize it, put it in the car, see what you got. Yeah. You can always add more, and they're not heavy enough, I don't think, where they would be excessive. I would think it would be a starting point, and then you would probably want possibly add, if it's not good, you'd probably be adding more. I don't think you'd be taking any away, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, if you want to use a little less weight, you can use one of those instead of the tungsten one.
Or use it as a start. And again, on the Carrera, do they even make tungsten weight for that, you know, in those magnet sizes?
No, they don't.
See, I did the same thing to this. I demagnetized those. And it's okay. The tires on it, I need to work on it a little bit more. The front end's a mess.
You can always use tungsten fishing putty.
True.
I
again,
find
this is stuff I already have. It's already there. It fits the car perfectly. So why not start there? If you need more, add more. You may not need it.
I think I've got enough weight to try.
It seems like a good idea. The only problem I'd have with it is the scrutineers at any club would be looking at your car. The first thing they will say is, "What's that?" I don't need that aggravation. So, you know, having any metal in those apertures would just be a delay to my race and a distraction. So I wouldn't do that. But tungsten putty is useful because it can be put anywhere. But having taken over looking after some club cars, I have a whole box full of the NSR Mercedes cars, and some of these cars have had lighter fluid dropped onto their braids and brushed, and as I've opened them up to take stewardship and ownership of these cars for refill them for next year, I found that the tungsten putty has melted and gone slimy inside. So, you know, it's a kind of, tungsten putty is good. It's good on your own cars, but if you've got shared cars and you don't know what people are doing with them, cleaning the braids, maybe not so great.
The slotted tungsten putty does not run. It's not the easiest to use, but the slotted brand of putty works great. It will not run. A lot of the other putties, after 2 or 3 weeks, your box and the bottom of the chassis will be full of tungsten putty that's melted.
But even if it gets a bunch of lighter fluid on it?
I'm not sure what you mean.
That's what Alan was talking about, is the cars he was working on with the NSR putty the braids had been messily cleaned with lighter fluid, which got into the chassis and onto the putty.
I don't know that I've gotten putty, lighter fluid on the slotted putty, but in general, it doesn't run.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
They say the fishing stuff is underwater anyway, so that I've never had no problems with it going soft.
Water and lighter fluid are the same thing.
Yeah, but I'm saying it hasn't. I mean, so you put all attractants and things on the fishing baits, they've got all chemicals in them. And as I say, I've never had no problems with it at all.
The other advantage for Mike and I is Mike and I are tech control. So
that's the thing. Brian's rules.
I know what that piece of metal is. So, but I understand your concern there, Alan. It's like one less thing I have to explain away, which something tells me you have to do a fair amount of that anyways. So anymore is just unnecessary.
It's true, and there's nothing worse than somebody picking up the scrutineer's car and saying, "What the bloody hell's going on here?" You know, it's a bit embarrassing, if nothing else, that you have to explain it. So, you know, I wouldn't ever put anything in those apertures. But it may be, though, for wood racing, because my cars don't really ever have very much weight in, but for wood racing, you would need a lot more weight, and you probably would need weight in the motor mount, and that probably is nowhere near enough to make a difference.
Yeah, on wood tracks with the small can motor sidewinders, we started about 5 grams.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're ready for, is there anybody else got any show and tell? All right, let's do some club corner. If you got some past, present, or future, more than one person racing at a time activity to talk about, now's the time to raise your virtual hand or wave your real hand and talk about it. I'll talk about my club since I don't see anybody raising their hand. I'm gonna do a screen share here. Come on, screen share. There we go. Browser and video. That's not what I was doing. Okay, so we just started our Sideways Group 5 series, and I threw up a recording of one of the heats. Oh, I should have shown until that, actually. Anyways, here's one heat of the Group 5s. We're running on about half of our tracks are Electric Sport, half of them are wood. We run with the Scale Auto foam tires. This series is using the white foam tires, which is the softest of the compounds. They run fantastically. I just started using the lotion, the Nivea lotion suggestion that I saw posted on Slot Forum by a German racer named Chris. He uses that lotion on his Scale Auto foam tires. The research that I did basically showed that the kind of lotion that he was recommending is one of few lotions that have mineral oil as the primary ingredient. You got water, mineral oil, and then a bunch of other stuff. A lot of regular hand lotions don't have mineral oil in it. So I'm assuming that that's the active ingredient that helps work on the Scale Auto foam tires. The traction was great from start to finish. I didn't feel like I lost traction, as sometimes do. Just use the Scale Auto tire cleaner. With our club, you're only allowed to do tire prep once at the beginning of the race. Car goes on the track with dry tires, so any treatment you do has to have done its thing before the racing starts. And then once your cars are in park firm, you don't get to touch the tires at all. So whatever you do has to last the whole night. And sometimes the Scale Auto tire cleaner doesn't last the whole night. Sometimes it does. The Nivea lotion seemed to do a pretty good job with that. Good enough that I got a fairly decent finish. Let's do the reveal on that. Not a whole lot of guys there. We are a few less guys racing the other night, but you know, not going to complain about second place behind one of the best racers in the club, and that was mainly because of an early off, and we raced crash and burn, so I lost quite a few laps from one of the crashes. But you know, great night of racing, great cars, lots of fun to be had by all. All right, I'm done. Mike has his hand up. What you got to tell Mike?
Well, I want to apologize to Garth for not getting the video of this week up yet because I've been ensconced in my house building projects. But we had a great time. Everybody won a race. Everybody lost a race. One of the guys lost to the ghost car, which is embarrassing to say the least. And I barely made it past the ghost car. So we had set the ghost car running pretty fast, and it was interesting. But we did have a lot of glitches with the track running to full power. In one of the races, it seemed to damage my car for a while because when you short the thing, it goes to disconnect and then it goes full power on all the time. And that's a real pain. So I think there's a little bit of poor connection somewhere in the track, even though I have plenty of power taps. So I have to see. And the inside lane seems to be stronger for some reason. And normally the fastest lane is the outside lane. So there's got to be something going on, and I'll have to investigate that. But anyway, we had a great time. As I say, everybody got a first, a second, and a last. So it worked out well. So good fun.
What cars?
And Garth, I will post it ASAP.
What were the cars you were racing?
Oh my God, you're asking me questions. I don't know. I don't remember because I haven't looked at them yet. I know we raced LMPs, the slotted LMPs. Oh, crap. Can't remember. But you'll find out tomorrow or today.
Okay. No biggie. I was just curious. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. We actually tried racing some of the, we were going to race some of the newly formed Trans Am cars, no mag, but it was pretty much a crash fest because they're so high. And we got to work on them somewhat to get them in parity, and also to get them in parity mainly. But we raced, Rat Bastard and I raced the Mopar and one of the I think one of the Javelins. No, the Cougar, the scale. Well, both Scalextric inlines, and they're much slower than the Mustang, the Pioneer Mustang. I think probably because of the motor. The motor in the Pioneers is 21,000 as opposed to the 18 of Scalextric. But they're also Sidewinder as opposed to inline. So we'll see. I'm working on on the Javelin as well, and I've got a 3D printed chassis. The only problem with that is that in order to get it in there, you have to use narrower tires, which is never a good thing.
Hold that up again.
So, here. It's an Oliver chassis.
Yeah.
And you can see that the tires barely fit in there. And I really don't want to chew up the body that badly.
Yeah.
I lowered this considerably when I was racing mag cars because, of course, lower is always better. And so I've had to do some compensation for that. So we'll see how it works. But I'm anxious to try this chassis out, even with, and I'm also thinking about the Oliver. Let's see if you can see that, the inline version that has movable rear height.
Yeah.
So I want to try that and see how it goes too.
Oh, that's good, isn't it? One motorpod fits all offsets.
Yeah.
Is this the same car that you were just showing?
He was just
no, that's a Camaro. This is a Javelin.
Oh, okay. I wondered why you were having such a struggle getting the wheels in. That's all.
Oh yeah, the Camaro's got plenty of room. I hate Camaros.
Love Camaros, love them.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I bought that Javelin myself because blue and yellow, and yeah, it's just tall and narrow, and it rolls all the time.
Yeah, it is.
I look forward to.
So we'll see how it goes. We did get the Cougar that I have, the yellow Cougar, has a 3D printed chassis in it too. So we'll see how it goes. But I've had too much on my plate lately to get much car work done. So
Mike, do you
have to wait till next year, I think.
I'm not sure if anyone's ever explicitly said this to you, but painting a car blue and yellow doesn't solve its problems.
No, but this is actually purple and yellow. Greg.
Fake news.
It's purple and yellow.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Mike, do you race any Cudas in that class?
I've got the Challenger is the Mopar that I was running.
Okay.
I don't have a Scalextric CUDA.
Okay.
But
Does
since
that Challenger
I
got a 3D chassis, 3D printed chassis in a Challenger? Or is it
no, they didn't have it there, and I bought the one for the CUDA thinking it would fit because they're so similar. Not. So now I have to buy the Challenger, the CUDA to fit the chassis that I've got.
I saw one that had they had a CG slot car.
Yeah, they do now. It's out now, but it wasn't when I ordered it. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see how it goes. I probably will convert all the Trans Am cars to 3D printed chassis. Speaking of that, of 3D printed, Brian, how stiff is your pod that you're made?
It's pretty good. I think I can make it stiffer. The problem with these are, the weak point obviously is toward the front here. I can make that side as thick as it needs to be, but there are a few places.
It looks like you've made it thick as the slotted one.
So, but it could probably be a little thicker yet.
Well, I was just wondering if you compared it to a slotted chassis to see how much stiffness it has in it. You might, since you have a solid plate on the bottom, it might be stiffer.
Yeah. The only one I have to compare it to is a Sidewinder here. And I would say it's comparable.
Okay.
Once you get the motor in there, that stiffens things up too. Because, I use the two motors.
Yeah, but still, you want the pod as stiff as possible.
It could probably be stiffer, but, who's never said that before?
Yeah.
Really?
On that note.
Yeah, Alan, just to let you know, all modern cars look good in blue and yellow.
No. See,
they go
the only color that makes a car work better, in my experience, is black. It just does. If I paint a car black, suddenly it just bursts into life. I don't know.
I've got a black car.
Which one's that?
That's the Lola.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't work for me. It means I can't see it.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me either. I've got a black Radical and I can't see that going around the track either.
All right,
that's because I'm half blind. I don't need to see the car. I drive by sense of smell. But revisiting black cars, quickly, you remember this project that was going on?
I was going to say, who's got a Batmobile? There we go.
Yeah, the Batmobile. I managed to find at a swap meet. I managed to find some urethane tires to go on the back of this beast. So these are great big things. Let me pop one of these wheels off, one of the tires off, and then you can see what it is. But it's a great big fat tire with an internal sidewall, and that has allowed me to get a tire that fits this Batmobile. If you can see, it ropes around here, so the tire has got a sidewall that wraps around the wheel. So it's not just a tube. You can see the diameter changes. So that was another score from the swap meet, and so I think I'm getting closer to being able to run a pair of Batmobiles for the Christmas thing at London Slotcar, which would be nice. But just thought, while we're on the subject of black cars, let me show you them.
All right, well, look forward to that show and tell when you get those all race ready. And thanks for sharing, Mike. And Big Den, you're next.
Yeah, just before I show a few images, on the earlier debate about the having purpose built angle winder gears for angle winder cars. I mean, I watch a lot of James Cleave's tech tips, and it always seems to me he used straight cut spur gears on his, and the cars he's running are doing monstrous revs and Group 27 and open and all sorts of things that spin a lot quicker than some of the stuff we're using. So I guess sometimes it all depends on whether the relationship with the pinion and the axle are on a similar plane rather than meshing across the teeth, if I could put it that way.
Well, James has got a website, you could just get on there and, it's always got his tech tips things. You can always just get on there and say, hey, how come you guys don't use angle winder gears? There must be a reason. I suspect that Brusca races are so short that they just don't worry about it. They probably replace the gears as often as they replace the motors, which is, every 3 minutes, I think.
The reason is that the angle winder spur gear creates a side force in the rear axle and the straight cut doesn't.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because the gears push apart and the push is at an angle, it puts a slight side force into the rear axle.
Oh yeah, but that can be dealt with bearings. That force has to go somewhere. So on a sidewinder, they're pushing each other apart. And with an angle winder, you're reducing some of that pushing apart. So you could say that you're just transferring that.
No, the pushing apart force is always the same. Depending on the torque, it increases with the amount of torque that you're applying, but you're just changing the direction of the push. With the angle winder gear, it pushes the rear axle slightly across the car as well as rotationally, as well as backwards. But with a straight cut, you're only pushing the axle backwards.
No, that's not true, Wayne. I mean, with an inline, you're not pushing the axle against the bearings at all. The bearings don't take any extra load from the drive, whereas an inline with a sidewinder, you do. And as you sway the motor out as an angle, more of a component of that force is pressed sideways to the point where you get to an inline where all of the force is sideways. So, there's pros and cons. Like I said, just get on to James and ask him why you don't use them. I'll be interested myself.
I can think of one reason that you would do it, and it's because the amount of gear mesh is so small. If there's any movement on the rear axle, it would tend to put a larger load on a smaller portion of the gear. And if I've had that happen in 124th racing, where you'd have an axle stopper loosen up, and it just strips the gears almost instantly, especially with the motors that we're running in that. So I can see a use for the angle winder gears, but most of the guys in the club don't use them. But we're running 24 minutes max. 3-minute heats for eight lanes. So and with a rest in between. But I can see the benefits there for longevity for sure.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, then the other a couple other things too. Someone saw some shiny stuff across my face a few minutes ago. I can assure you I wasn't being targeted by a sniper with a laser guided rifle or something. That was just the sun was coming up here and was showing through the window. So all is well in that regard. Mike was talking earlier about his ghost car going well in one of the races. I think it was the Carrera GT race. I had trouble at times when I was watching the video working out which was actually the ghost car, because it seemed to be getting along at a fair old pace. So it doesn't surprise me in the results that the ghost car beat somebody.
Well, we usually set it to about 1.5 seconds slower than we're average running, but the ghost car doesn't stop for fuel or anything, so it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It does make it more interesting, because let me tell you, I tried like hell to beat that ghost car. I was not gonna get beat by that thing.
Yeah.
The ghost cars have a magnet in, Mike.
Yeah, the ghost car is magnetized.
I mean, on parts of the track, the ghost car looked outrageously quick, through the corners and things. So yeah, I'll try it. Yeah, a very sort of low key screen shares today. So I'll just hop into the. So we've been, I've been doing a bit of. We're right there. Yep. So been doing a bit of racing at the track that we call Laguna Seca, which is probably about 10 minutes out of our city centre here, 10 to 15 minutes, which means we haven't got a very big city centre or very big city. But we haven't been taking a lot of photos of the actual racing, so I just thought I'd do just a couple of shots here. This is the trickiest bit of the the track. And why I showed this, we've got a new addition to our racing squad. Is one of the guys brought his 7-year-old daughter along. I sold him a few slow cars so that she could have something to learn with, and she's about the quickest person through this portion of the track because she knows no fear. And yeah, so for someone who's 7 or 8 years old and was only ever a second go to the slot car, she did amazingly well on the night. So the other good thing about having a 7-year-old is for a while there's somebody I'll be able to beat. So until she starts getting fairly fit. So just another track. There's the track owner's father. He's about the same age as me, busy at work over in the pits. And just our results there. That was our open class. The 3 out of the top 4 are using Moslers, and so the results. Can you see the totals there? They're not. I mean, the results aren't all that conclusive because of our lack of marshals. You know, we stop and marshal one another's cars, or somebody will wait for somebody just to make it a closer race. So yeah, it's pretty light-hearted at the moment. So my shots were blurry on the phone, so I just knocked up a small spreadsheet of the GT2 results. These are all Revos. Peter and I, that's David's father, we were just about 3 feet apart at the end of the race. So I was sort of ruining the fact that I stopped to put someone else's car on there. Muscle cars, yeah, just pretty close at the top again. And this is one for Alan, where he broke the guide holder on his chassis. CG slot car components make these. You can either get the complete guide ring, which they make, I think, started doing to replace for Carreras, and I've grafted them into some SCX chassis and similar, or you can just get the little guide repair kit, you know, the little tongue part. So yeah, it depends on how much trouble you want to go to repair your chassis. So
yeah, that's nice. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you know, it saves throwing away an otherwise, you know, reasonably good chassis, Alan.
Have we got a UK distributor for CG slot car stuff?
I mean, there's lots of options out there. Mike was just holding up one of the B Nova adapter / repair things.
Yeah.
You know, I designed a 3D printed one that just, you know, anybody can 3D print. There's lots of options out there.
Yeah, I'm actually running a couple that Phil in Hobart is 3D printed, and yeah, they work fine. And also a chap called Bingo in Paul Bing in New Zealand does them as well. So he's called Slotcar Innovations, I think, from memory. So that's me for this part of the game anyway. So over to Dewan or Brian.
All right, thank you, Big Den. Dewan, you're next, and then we'll do Brian.
Okay. I made a cameo appearance at the Far Out Slotcar Club race this past weekend. I'm surprised. I had anticipated Dennis to be on because he showed up too. I wasn't expecting him to be there. It was kind of nice seeing him. We were racing the Formula One and Revo Slot GT2s, and I had this Formula One that I've been playing around with, and I attempted to use my tire razor to true the tires, and they came out horribly. So after I talk about our club corner thing, I definitely want to talk a lot about best practices on using the tire razor and some of the nuances, in particular with these NSR rubber tires, because I tell you, to the point that when I got to the race, I had to end up using loaner cars as opposed to using my actual car. So. And then my Revo slot was even worse. It was the track we were raced on was a wooden track with a very high angled bank, or 2 banks actually. and this Revo slot couldn't. It was running so horribly it couldn't even make it across the bank. It just was sliding down the bank. So I just need. I really about the story is that I
More
really
finger
need
to one. More finger.
more throttle. Sorry.
To hold it up on the bank.
But yeah, it's I definitely need to do some tuning. I'm going to get with some of the guys in our club. And one of the key things that came out of this was that the guys in this Far Out club, there's some really, really good racers in that club. I mean, you got oh gosh, another half a dozen really, really top end racers as part of that club. So as expected, I finished 14th. 14 in the and I finished 13 out of 13 in the Revo slot GT2. But it was fun. I get loaners as opposed to, and I missed in the F1 race. I missed by 1/10 of a lap from finishing out of the last place spot. But
you almost got last.
Yeah, almost not last, but it was fun. I flew down there, raced, flew back. So I'm hoping to do the same thing in a couple of weeks, but right now flight's looking horrible. I gotta be able to make it.
You got to come to Northern California and race.
I'm gonna be travel as I become healthier and everything. I travel all I can. That's one of the good things. I have wonderful travel privileges, so it's not much for me to just take off and go.
This Saturday, be there.
I got family out this weekend, so it's a little tough, but yeah. So that I definitely want to talk about the tire racer. Oh, another thing that popped up, I received a shared inbox from our club, of a new racer out in Las Vegas, a new track in the Las Vegas area. I guess gentleman Mike Tucker, who used to have a commercial track down in San Diego, has moved up here to Las Vegas. And he's got a King, well, it's a 4-lane King track, but a little bit smaller than Silver. I think it says 87 or 88 feet instead of the 155, I guess the normal King track is. But it's a 4-laner, and he's got it as residence in Las Vegas. And so I actually reached out to him earlier this week, and we're definitely going to be getting together and doing some. He focuses on flexies, and so I know that's a whole different class, and I'll have to kind of get acclimated to that and try to. But slot racing is slot racing, like we all said. So I'm planning on doing a little bit of that, and then waiting for my track to finally get built up. And probably about 4 to 5 months away from having that done. That's it.
Alrighty, good stuff. Looking forward to hearing about that racing.
Yeah.
And Brian got his hand up. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, mine, I don't know so much Club Corner, but just our quarterly Slotcar show, Swap Meet, is again this Sunday.
Oh, don't be showing off fantastic deals again.
So hopefully Wednesday I'll have some new cars to show off. I know the one guy usually shows up, NSRs for $50. Sometimes there's even better deals to be had, so stay tuned.
Where's that show and when is it?
It's in Kirkwood, suburb of St. Louis, and it's Sunday.
What was it called?
It's just called St. Louis, what is it? Slotcar and Hot Wheels show. So,
alrighty.
Not as much 132nd as there is HO,
yeah.
But I've never come away from there with less than 4 cars. So.
All right, so if you're in the St. Louis area, be sure and hit that show early so you can buy out any slot cars Brian buy.
Tell you what, the guy who was selling the NSRs for $50 a piece, I don't know what this guy bought out, but his wife even said, if you want, you can come to the house. He's got so much. This isn't even touching the stuff he has. So hopefully we'll find some more good deals this week.
Come up with 5 or more, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
is anybody
working?
Is anybody
Yep,
looking for something in particular? Because I know he had Ninko Classics and all kinds of stuff. So
Hey, feel free to message me some blue and yellow car pictures, and I'll tell you whether or not I want them.
Okay. Well,
If you find a Ferrari 250 Ninko, I would take it.
250 Ferrari Ninko. Okay.
Yeah, the Ferrari Testarossa.
Gotcha. You got
preferably in yellow.
You got a high end. I mean, you got a top price you're willing to pay?
Yeah, maybe 50.
Okay. I'll keep an eye out. 250 Ferrari Testarossa, preferably in yellow.
I'm not sure what. Oh yeah, Mike wants a yellow Testarossa. I don't know. Did they make a yellow Testarossa?
Yeah.
Oh yes, they do.
Okay.
I know that for sure. But you know my feeling about red cars.
Yeah, definitely not red.
Have they got any Sanaco cars there?
Yeah. No, I already called dibs on it. So
no.
All right, Jared, do you want to try your mic again? Do your intro?
Yeah, I think I finally figured it out. It was on the iPad situation, so it might be a little loud when I talk because I'm actually in the shop. I'm actually at work, so you might hear some air. But so I've seen a lot of these forums talk. I just haven't had the time to log on when you guys are on. So this is number 134, and my favorite number is 34. So I said, I'm going to give it a go this time, and I'm going to step in at 134. So I've been in 132nd slot car racing since I was a wee little lad, probably about 4 years old. And my dad was the one that got me in accidentally, because when he was a young man in Mexico, he raced the Scalextric Triangle X and Mex down there. So he had his big track. And when him and his mates actually stopped running, they put it in a pole, and he won it. So that track got put away. And when I was born, about 4 or 5 snooping around, the electric 132nd was in my life, and it never went away from there. So it's been 132nd my whole life. I'll make a long story short, kind of stepped away and went into go-kart racing in about mid 2000s, 2006 to about 2015. And because there wasn't a lot of people in 132nd when I got into it. So I went to a lot of the hobby shops that had a lot of the cars there, but never found anybody that wanted to run 132nd, but I kept with it. I bought myself a tire racer when it first came out. So I've had a tire racer for a long time, and I've used it, and I worn it down. And on my own suspicion, I kind of took magnets out of cars and started gluing tires, just not knowing anything, and just kind of fell into this. And I've been into it, and in about 2018, I'm from California, kind of stumbled upon a place called Sidewinder Raceway. And they were 132nd shop with 3 tracks. I walked in and I about fell over to see people running 132nd scale cars. So from then on, I went full in. So, but I've always had a special liking to SEX cars. I don't know why. I've just always had SEX cars in my life, and so doing I've actually talked to our now the guy that's from SEX, and I've had a few times talk with him. There's I don't know if you guys seen this car before. That is the actual SEX CAR with Pirelli tires, even though they never ran with a Pirelli tire. I talked to them because when I received this car, most SEX cars are potted. This one is not potted, and I don't know if this is going to be there now for the GT3 cars, if that's how they're going to send them now. So they still have the funky guide there, which gets pushed in. It runs pretty good on my plastic track. I compete in wood, so I've been able to get this SEX Safari pretty competitive for Scalextric and SCX running with the guys from my club. And I picked this car because this is actually about early 2000s re-release of these SCX cars. And it does have the new FR 42 motor. So you can find specs on that motor. It's actually a really good motor now. But they still didn't go with the typical FR 130. I mean, that's their thing, but it looks like it's an FR 130, but it's not. So because the FR 130 will not fit on here, even though you think it may fit, it won't. So I've had quite a bit of talk with some of the Slotcar people, and one of the other cars that I've been tuning is this Black Arrow. These cars to me are amazing. These Black Arrows are very competitive. One of the guys at the club has the Black Bull. I believe they're as quick or faster than some of the cars that are out there. Their chassis are amazing. We were talking about earlier about the gear mesh there, the angle winder, how close they are. So this car originally has 17-inch wheels with tires, and stock, the tire does hit the end of the shaft there. I decided to go with 16-inch slotted wheels and NSR super grip tires, the same way as my buddy at my club does. And his Black Bull runs amazing with that Zoo motor. So, but as you can tell, it is really, really close there. So I still need to cut the tires. They are glued. I just need to cut them and give them the profile that they need and to prep them correctly. One of the other things that I do in the front here, as you can tell, a lot of people use, they have their juice they can put in the front for, I usually put floor. I don't use enamel or the other stuff because I usually use shine for hardwood floors, and that doesn't make it so hard, and it won't go down the track making noise. It actually gives it that shine where it's still hard, but it doesn't clank down the road or down the track. We do use putty, and that's regular putty there, but the car doesn't come with magnets. So yeah, that's a little bit of my karting experience, or of my experience with slot cars. I
might have missed it earlier while my dog was barking, but where are you and what club do you race with?
So I run in Sacramento, in California, and the Sacramento area. Our club, you can follow us on YouTube. If you just search in the YouTube GCRA, that's Gold Country Slot Car Racing Association. Why they picked that name, it's long. I don't know why, but that's our club. I do run with Jim Rose. Has been very helpful in a lot of the tuning that we've done. So Jim is very, very knowledgeable on this, and so I always keep my mouth shut and I always open up my ears when he's speaking, because it does help. And I just wanted to thank you in front of the world there, Jim. So thank you very much.
Checks in the mail for saying that. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
I'll say thank you for nothing too, Jim, if you send me a check.
Well, I'm glad you can join us.
Jerry's one of the guys that travels, and he'll go to different tracks, whether it's the Gold Country, which is kind of an association in Sacramento, or San Jose or Modesto. So he travels around and races because he's not close to anything. He says Sacramento, but how far are you from Sacramento? About an hour and a half?
It's well, depending on what track in Sacramento we go. But the least is an hour and about an hour and a half. The farthest is almost 3. But I'll run, I'll drive. So that's what I've done. Also, speaking about, starting my origins down in Mexico with my dad racing. I also talked to the guys in Spain. I'm very close with the guys in Spain. I'm actually close with the guys with Black Arrow, and hopefully soon I can get them to give me some cars and release some cars so we can run Black Arrow down here more, because they're kind of forgotten, and it's a great product. I talked to Rafa from Fly. we have conversations, and obviously the guys from SEX. So I always try to keep an open hand with the slot car community, because it's important. We're small, we're tiny, and I think the more we know, the better.
Well, I'm glad you could join us, and hopefully you can come back more often.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, guys.
So I believe the floor is open, or did we have any other Club Corner stuff to go over? Not seeing or hearing any. Dewan wanted to talk about tire razoring, which is a challenge. Every type of tire seems to have its own way of needing to be done. Can you describe what your process was that ended up with the bad results?
Well, because I was using these NSR, and I just took each wheel off, a wheel and tire, and I put them on one. I was just doing one side at a time. And the first tire I took off, I probably spent about 15, 20 minutes of it on the tire razor going back and forth. And I was not seeing any discharge or any debris, but it was stopping. The motor was kind of seizing up a little bit, so I could see that there was some pressure on the tire razor. There was grinding and everything. So I finally stopped it, and I saw that it had beat it up quite a bit all over the tire. It was just like little tiny BBs on the tire. And so I just used my little sticky roller to pull most of that up, pull those off. And I put that one on the back on the car and took the other wheel off. And the other one was discharge, it was grinding some material off. And I had I was measuring things, try to get them both to the same diameter, which was very, very difficult, but nonetheless. So one was discharging and was grinding some material off, and the other one just beat it up. And so that was part of the differences. But when I put them back on put the wheels back on the car, I saw that they were just grossly untrue, very untrue.
They're still out around?
Yeah, they were out around. They're almost conical, and I know that in putting the wheel on the axle, you have to push the tire a little bit off to the edge to get to the set screw, yeah, to get to the set screw and everything. And so I know that I was repositioning the tire a little bit on the wheel, but man, and I didn't glue them. And I talked to some of the guys in our far out club, and they don't glue theirs either. They just say they just put it across the opening. But boy, I just need to know basically better practices on utilizing that, especially with the NSR wheels. And I know when they looked at because I had a couple people look at my car, and they said that I need to really true them down. Get them brought down quite a bit. Another millimeter, I think, is what he suggested. One of the guys suggested.
Do they allow you to glue those tires in that class in that far out?
I don't know. They're so straight out of the box. They try to keep almost everything straight out of the box, but truing to tires is one of the only things that you can do. Many of them, they have you actually change the tire. Well, on some classes, they have you change the tires. For the NSRs, you get to use the NSR tires out the box. But I did not glue them, and I thought that maybe that might have been because of the ability to have it move around on the wheel. It might cause the get them out of around untrue. So, but
if you're allowed to glue them in that class at far out, glue them.
So I mean to interrupt. Hey, Dewan, how's it going? So. Okay. So yeah, it's going to be really tough. So I have trued tires not glued on my razor, but it is, you have to be extremely patient and very, very low on the aggressiveness of you grinding the tire if they're not glued. So they should be allowed to be glued because it's not a really mean of an advantage. But if they don't, that tire process of cutting that tire not being glued is extremely patient, very, very patient, and you can barely even touch it. It'll take about, I mean, I've done it and it takes about an hour, hour and a half to do one tire for it to be that perfect. So I would find out if you can glue. If you can glue, one of the important things about gluing a wheel to the tire is definitely washing the wheel. You got to get the oils off the wheel, and then you can glue it, and then you can be a little bit more aggressive on the razor. So
and the rubber too. You got to clean the rubber off.
Yeah, wash both wheels and the tire. Get them glued on. If I'm ever in Las Vegas, I can swing by. I think you're in Las Vegas, correct?
Yeah, Vegas and LA. I got on LA a lot too.
Okay, so I have a buddy that lives in Las Vegas. If I ever swing by to give him a hand, I'll touch bases with you, and I'll give you a complete class of how to do it on the tire razor. Once you figure it out, you're gonna be like, wow, what an amazing tool it is. And I have both. I have a tire razor and I have a Huddy, and I vouch for both.
What voltage you at?
We'll get it fixed.
What was the difference between one of them the little BBs versus the other one actually grinding off part of the material on the tire?
You were probably being too aggressive on the. Yeah, you're probably being too aggressive on that tire to beat it up. You really
what voltage are you truing at?
Yeah, I went up down to about 5 volts, 4.5 to 5
too
volts.
Fast. Yeah, it's too fast.
Because I mean, it depends on the grit of sandpaper you're using, you know, and every type of tire is going to be a little bit different. But when I'm truing a type of tire that I'm not familiar with, the first thing I do is use the highest grit sanding surface that I can find, or the lowest grit number wise, but the deepest cutting, you know, sandpaper I can get. Like I got some like 80 diamond stuff that's self stick that I use most of the time because I don't go for a polish. I just go to get it to round. And then low voltage, so it's going slow. And then
define low voltage, because I thought the 5 was low. So.
I mean,
no, 5 is not low.
It depends on, you know, you can try 5 or 3 or 8 or whatever, but probably the most important thing is that you're not just cranking it down. Like you can crank it down on a urethane tire, but pretty much nothing else can be cranked down hard. You want to basically just kind of skim it and then stop it and look at it. Let it cool down. Make sure you are actually taking material off. And if it's not taking material off, then, you know, why? You know, maybe crank it down just a teeny bit more. But the last thing you want to do is just let it run and run and run while you're cranking it down and down and down, because it's going to deform the tire. It's going to overheat the tire, especially when it's not glued on. It's going to, you know, spin around on the rim, all those other things. You know, some guys go fast, some guys go slow, but pretty much always you're not putting a lot of pressure on it. You want to take the high spots off first anyways, and so you use very little pressure at least at the beginning, just so you're taking off the high spots and not deforming the tire while it's spinning around. I'm sure Jim and Jerry have better tips.
What's happening probably is at 5 volts, which in my opinion is too fast, and not glued, the tire is ballooning. You may not even see it, but the tire is ballooning as it spins, and it's being inconsistent when you're trying to cut it, and then it's getting hot, and then it's causing all the problems. You really double check the rules, but if you can glue them, period. End of, in my opinion, end of sentence. And then on my hoodie, which is a different animal, I true at 3.5 volts, but I true about a 0.5 at a time. I mean, that's minute. And you can hear it truing. You can hear it doing something, and you can actually hear the pitch of it start to go up as it starts to pull the rubber off and then go in another 0.5. So that like Jerry said, takes an hour to do a tire. It can take a long time to do one tire at that speed, because, and with these super grip tires, they do ball up if they get hot or they get too abrasive and stuff like that. So front tires, NSR front tires, 6-7 volts, no problem, because they're such a hard rubber, it'll true very easily. But these super grips, you've got to be super careful with them.
What kind of tires are those, Jerry? Are you still muted?
So those, hello.
No, you're good.
Right. So, okay. So this is a straight axle, and these are NSR super grip tires on this SEX. Okay. So on this, I did use my tire razor because I couldn't use it on obviously on my hoodie. So these two tires, I do them together on my tire razor, and they took, now that I got experience, it took me about 10 to 15 minutes. And they were polished when I finished up. I polished them off with the NSR oil. That's the way I got taught to do it. Talking to Andrea, that's what he recommends, so that's how I do it. So these tires are actually, this car runs really well for being an SEX. And I did the fronts also. It's got the straight axle in it because SEX now comes with independent fronts. So I just put a straight axle in it, and this is the tire razor here. So on my other cars, my competition cars, this is my Black Arrow. I used the hoodie for this one. And same thing, I do them slow. I do them at 5 volts now because obviously I got the experience now, but slow and patient will win the game. And so as you start using it more, but they're all glued. All my tires are glued. I had a situation where we were running a Porsche Cup on the NSR 997 Porsche Cup when it started running really, really well at the beginning of the series. And by race 5, it had dropped a lot of time. I'm like, what happened to my car? So what ended up happening was that the rear tires started to unglue themselves, and I lost a lot of time in that. So that taught me a lesson. I'm glad they got unglued. I finished 7th or 8th out of 10. So but the first 2 races the car was on rails, and that was because the tires were glued. I don't understand how in Spain, and I talked to my buddies in Spain, how they run without the tires being glued, because they do not glue tires in Spain. They are adamant, no gluing tires. I'm like, how do you guys run? I'm like, I'm sure that if I tune one of their cars and put it on their scale auto track, they wouldn't be able to believe how fast the car is. So, but to each their own, and that's how they run.
I think the racing in Spain is a whole lot different though. Hi guys, sorry,
yeah, it
I'm
is.
late.
Because they run plastic. They run plastic.
Hey, Dennis.
Dennis, the question. Dennis, one of the questions that just came up: are you allowed to glue the tires at far out on the F1 cars?
Yes, you're allowed to glue tires in any class at far out, as far as I know. I've always done so.
So my recommendation was, if you can glue tires. End of sentence.
Oh yeah. But talking about the way that they race in Europe, first of all, it's polycar or some or other plastic track, most of it, not all. But the design of their tracks is very different to what we run here, in that they've got very long straights, tight corners. It's point and squirt the whole time. I don't know that they ever put as much side load onto the tires as we do, running the kind of tracks that we run in the US. And so it's a whole lot different environment.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, you didn't see my cars when I was in the practice runs. I think you got
I didn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, because my GT2 car that race the Revo slot, it handled the bank. It got to the bank and it just rolled straight down. It was so horribly slow.
That are even more challenging for me, at least. Revo slot tires are even more challenging than NSR tires.
Yeah, the Revo slot tires need a completely different technique. I mean, Jim is right with the NSR and with Slotted and a bunch of others. But the Revo slot tires, what I found is you need to, number one, spin the drum faster. Number two, you need to make very short but quite aggressive cuts. So you feed the tire into the drum quite a lot and let it bite and then pull it straight out, and let it bite and pull it straight out, and let it bite and pull it out until you get it round, because you need to cut through that first skin almost around the tire. if you take it too slowly and you leave it running too long, then all it does is heat the tire up. And so that's what I've done always with the RevoSlot tires, is you feed it in and you can hear the drum bite. And if you're running at 4.5 volts or so on a hoodie, it normally is drawing about just on 1.8 to 1.9. And it'll jump to like 4 amps or 4.5 amps as you feed it in. And then you need to feed it straight out again, because you're basically just cutting for 4 or 5 revolutions and pulling it out, letting it cool. Go back in, do it again, do it again, do it again. And you cut slightly less and less and less every time once it's around. And then as well, what I found lately, which is what I showed, I think last week or the week before, where I put the reversing switch on my hoodie, cut in both directions. And that helps to give you a much smoother surface on the RevoSlot tires. And then there's a lot less polishing when you're done.
James Cleese has a video on that on his YouTube channel.
Who has? Sorry,
James Cleave, on how to cut a RevoSlot tire.
Oh, he cuts it he cut very slowly as well.
Yeah, but he uses that grab and release technique. Same thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and like I said, I have a tire raiser, and that's primary design to take a full axle and do both tires. I've been doing just one tire at a time, just because I was just being lazy. I don't know, but I know the hoodie is a single tire emphasis, and yeah. So is it? You find, and I know that you're a hoodie guy. you find the hoodie making that much of a difference, and being able to have the control and get the tire the way you wanted, more so than the tire raising.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah, mine too.
The only
at
reason
the same time, if you've got plastic wheels on solid on an axle, you don't have a choice. But there are ways to fix that as well, right? I mean, everybody almost always you're using the tire raiser by running the abrasive block underneath the tire. So what I do sometimes is take it out and I put it up vertically in front of the tire, and then I feed it into the tire this way, right? If you can understand what I'm saying. As the tire is rotating, I'm feeding the block in, it's standing on its edge, and I feed the tire, and then I can feed it in and take it out, feed it in and take it out, feed it in and take it out. And that helps a whole lot.
As opposed to going across the
yeah. Just make sure that the tire is turning so that it's turning. If you turn the tire so that the top of the tire is coming towards you, it'll pull the block down onto the base of the machine, and it'll jam very, very quickly. If you do it the other way around, you have a whole lot where the top of the tire is rotating away from you. You have a whole lot more control of how you can feed that block in because you just basically just tilt it like that. Hold it against the ridge or the edge of the channel so that it's square, and then just tilt it in until it touches the tire, and you can control it quite well with a little bit of practice.
You're just changing the polarity on the motor on the tire raiser to change.
Yeah,
I don't know which way they rotate normally. I know that my Area 3 one rotates to the top away from me when it's correctly done, but the tire raiser may be the other way around.
Yeah, it's how you fire it up. It's just a DC motor. So
it doesn't matter.
For the polarity on mine, I do it that way. So basically, the tire is trying to run into the tire raiser, away from me, kicking the debris at me. Unfortunately,
but that's always the unfortunate thing.
Because otherwise, if the tires are trying to run away from the razor, and you put too much pressure on them, they actually do pull out of the bracket.
Yeah, they bounce out of the yoke. Yeah.
So you pretty much have to make it rotate in towards the tire raiser. The other idea that I use sometimes is I remove the sandpaper and just put a little square of sandpaper, so that as I'm moving the plate back and forth, the tire is not on any sanding surface, and then basically the sanding surface passes under, back and forth, so the tire is on off on off on on off on.
That's possibly a good idea as well. Yeah.
Hey,
That'll-
Dennis,
Go ahead, Paul.
have you seen the NSR tire?
It's like a hoodie, isn't it? That kind of machine. Yeah, a drum.
The NSR one.
Yeah.
The
NSR tire machine.
The NSR tire truer that I recall had a big flat disc that rotated.
Oh yeah, it was like a sanding machine.
Yeah, hold on a minute, I've got one here.
So I have this car here. This is the NSR 4GT that Dennis tuned for me. I know Dennis, and Dennis doesn't know me, so but so this is a car that he did for me, and I wanted to see how how he trued and made the the cuts here in the outer and the inside edge, and they're perfect. So this is a Dennis Sampson tuned NSR GT40. It runs beautifully, and this one's also a Dennis Sampson tuned NSR GT4.
You never tape it, or did you tape it?
Both of these cars run beautifully. Obviously, I've actually done really well with both these cars. They don't have any weight, which is amazing. He didn't put any weight in them, so I didn't tune them. I just left them as they came in the box, and they're both the tires are tuned perfect. So I don't know if you use the hoodie or if you use the tire raiser on that one. But
no, those ones were done with the hoodie.
Well. Okay.
This is the if you could highlight that, Greg. This is the NSR tire truer, and it has two motors. So the one motor spins the grinding disc or the sanding disc. The other motor spins this axle here, and you put the tire on this side here, and you rub it up against there. You can also, by putting two tires on this side, do the oiling trick and run the two of them against each other to oil them. The switch that's on the back of the machine is a bidirectional single pole double throw, and it's just cleverly done with a couple of diodes so that in one direction it turns both motors, and the switch in the other direction it only turns the one motor when you're running it in oil. But that's the machine. They don't make them anymore, unfortunately, as far as I know.
I've been trying to get one. I've been trying to get one for ages. Can't get one anywhere.
So eBay or one of the forums is about the only place you're going to find them, I think.
I haven't even seen one on eBay.
Yeah.
So you didn't hear this from me. So I have talked to Andrea a few times about that tire machine, and here it goes. We'll see what we end up doing. I got a feeling they're going to release some more of those NSR tire machines, and when they do, I will be picking one up.
Yeah,
great.
So I called them and I talked to them, and I told them, hey, we need your NSR tire machine. We need it. So when I talked,
I used to do a lot of. I would do all the rough cutting on a hoodie, and then move the tire over onto the NSR because you get such a fine surface when you're done. That works pretty well. The only thing you've always got to realize with any of these machines is you keep the abrasive plate, keep it clean. The drum or the plate or the sanding disc, keep it clean. Brush the little bits of rubber off it all the time. But to answer your question about those two cars that I tuned for you, and that's another thing to talk about. To answer the question, those were done on the hoodie. I grind them, being super grips, I grind them dry until they're completely round and until the surface is completely flat. And I do not touch the edges while they're dry. And then once I've done both tires and I know that they're the same size, then I'll drop the voltage on the hoodie way down to like 2.5, and I will polish the tire with a nail board and some lighter fluid. And that's when I start to round the edges of the tire. As you're polishing the surface, round the edges of the tire. And then the very last thing, once you've done that with a couple of different grades of nail board from 80 down to 100, down to 120, or maybe a little bit further, depending on how anal you want to be. then what I'll do is I'll take some lighter fluid and I've got a piece of t-shirt material that comes from one of those exercise t-shirts, the sweat absorbing t-shirts, which seems to work better than some others because maybe there's something in it that gives the yarn a little bit of abrasion. Wrap it around your finger, wet your finger with wet the t-shirt material on your finger with some more lighter fluid, and then polish the tire and polish around the edges, and that's how you get them so smooth.
The best alternative is to send everything down to Dennis.
Yeah. Well, you send it to Electric Dreams and they charge you for getting me to do it.
All right, so obviously I'm sharing this. You know, it's when a new machine comes on the market, it's worth talking about. This is
Super
posted
nice.
on Home Racing World. I'll try to put a link in the description. But this is a CGSlotcar, mostly 3D printed. They use a aluminum base, I believe. They're planning all kinds of wonderful accessories for it. So that's the base unit.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're having a reduction, so like change the gear reduction.
Yeah,
so
double reduction.
RPM, so you get it even slower. Dial gauge, so you can get your height repeatability. A reciprocating accessory, so you don't have to move the plate yourself. Base unit for 190, and then all the other accessories. I don't think he priced out the accessories.
No, he hasn't priced the rest of it yet.
But yeah, it looks like a pretty nice machine.
The one really nice thing about it is that the yoke where the axle mounts, there are two little plates that go in, and you can see there's a couple of little slots there. So you can adjust the distance between the two plates of the yoke to match the axle or the space between the bushings. So you can get them as far apart as possible and get the bushings right out next to the wheels, which is where you want them when you're trying to trim. So that in itself is an excellent little advantage.
Yeah, that's
the other thing that he's done nicely.
This machine's intended for 32 scale as well as 64, is it?
No, this is intended for 32.
Yeah, I'm not sure the smallest gap is small enough for HO.
No, it won't be. No, this is a 1/32 scale the machine, Wayne.
So is it a 540 motor that we're looking at then?
No, that's a 550, I think.
Oh, so it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. I thought I was looking at a HO axle.
No.
Oh,
That's a 27 tooth. Looks like a scale electric or something like that axle. It's in there.
I'm thinking it's SCX.
Or with a gray gear and 27 teeth. Yeah.
Gosh, the machine's huge then.
We don't chew tires anyway.
Well, it will be. Yeah.
But that's a dual. I mean, that's a dual wheel. The single wheel.
No,
it's like a razor or
like a tire razor.
Like an RSM, isn't it? It's a lot like my one.
So,
it's a lot like an RSM.
Yeah, it does the kind of lever action that an RSM does, as opposed to the up and down that a razor or a tire tree do.
Although the RSM and others use the tension of the O-ring against the axle pulley to provide pressure. This one has those springs that press everything down, and then that hand wheel at the back actually holds it up against the pressure of the springs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so when you're lowering the tires on, you're actually just releasing the grooves.
You're releasing the spring tension, yeah.
And then the pressure is consistent because it's always applied by that coil spring there.
Yeah, two of them by the looks of it, one on each side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. I think it's really nice. It'll be well worth a good look at.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting.
Dewan, the bottom line is when you get these done and you figure out the technique like Dennis is doing, your tires will look like they're silicone. They're that smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And no stopping the motor by applying more and more pressure.
Yeah, never get to the point where the motor that's driving the wheels stops. That's your indicator you're done messed up.
It's a slow process, particularly when you first start. And particularly on the stickier the rubber, the worse it gets. If you do urethane, it's simple. If you do rubber, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
I have a question about urethane tires because I've got very little experience with them. Are they about the same weight as a rubber tire, or are they lighter?
Oh, they're a lot heavier because they're solid.
They're heavier.
Well, I think they're
if
heavier.
As
far as I know.
If it was if the exact same tire shape, same tire mold.
Oh, same tire mold.
I think they'd be
maybe
about
just
the
a
same.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just thinking that I just finished doing a restoration and putting some urethane tires on a old Rusket car, and the urethane tires in that size are a lot heavier than the rubber tires were in that size.
Okay.
It was one of those Rusket Black Widows, they called it, the one with the double motor and four-wheel drive.
Wow.
Something that I've had in I've had this in my project box for 10 years. And Tuesday I decided, you know what, it's time I did this.
Are those motors attached to each other or independent?
No, they're independent.
Gosh.
They drive independently, two sets of gears, one at each end.
And of course, you can put different ratios on each end if you wish to.
Yeah, you can, especially seeing as there's different diameters of tire front and rear as well.
Yeah.
It was a marketing thing. Rusket back in the day, when they changed from the Rusket 22 to the Rusket 23 motor, they had cases and cases of 22s left over. Didn't know what to do with them, so they excuse me. So they made this chassis that took two motors and sold two of them with every kit. Right. So there was the Lotus 38. There was a Lola T70, and there was an isogrifo that they did with this chassis, just with the Lola and the ISO had little pans that attached to the sides and made it wider, but the rest of the center section was the same.
I had the Lola, smashed it to pieces.
Okay, so
I found one. I actually got one for $35 at the blind auction one day.
I had it when I was must have been about 10. It was one of my dad's cars. Absolutely smashed it to pieces.
All right, we're coming down to our last few minutes. Mike and Courtney both have their hands up. Did you want to squeeze something in before I hit the stop button? Do you have some advice for tire treatment?
Yeah, actually, I think what happened with Dewan is that first off, he put too much pressure on it. And second off, when you're using one wheel, you tend to pull it off the stops because the tension on the O-ring that holds the axle assembly in is not enough to keep it from moving sideways. And that will definitely give you an out of round tire. But mostly if he's gotten to a point where the motor has stopped or slowed down a lot at 5 volts, he's got way too much pressure on it.
Yeah.
So those would be the couple things. And, just reiterate what the rest of the guys said about how much pressure you to put on. And Dennis's technique works really well on G25 tires too. The other question is, we're using plastic or metal wheels to one?
It was NSR, so the middle wheels, right?
Well, no, Revo slots, so they're metal wheels.
Yeah.
You're talking about the NSR wheels on the F1, and I think they're metal.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, they're metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the Revo slot, did you make sure you had the special bushings for because they're 3 millimeter axles on there? Did you have the bushings that are appropriate for that axle? If you hadn't got them, they're going to be off no matter what.
Yeah, never have the axle straight on the brackets. Always have to have an appropriate bushing or bearing or something.
I have the bushing and axles. I have 2 different sets, NSR and I guess it's slotted. Those are the 2 that I've been using.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you put the wheels from the Revo slot on a 3/32 axle instead of 3 millimeter, it's definitely going to be out of round no matter what you do.
Way out of round.
Yeah. because that's
Well-
a different size axle on the Revo slot. So that may be your problem there.
Okay, I have the NSR and I have a slotted. So those
Yeah.
are the two different.
Well, that's
Both of those are
they're
336.
If
Sorry.
you put,
So
if
you
you-
need a completely different axle, a Revo slot axle for
if you
that.
put a Revo slot tire on a 332nd axle, it will noticeably wobble when you turn the truer on
Right.
because it's so far off.
Courtney, what did you have for him?
Okay, so which of the two, the slotted or NSR axles, would match up better with the Revo slot?
Neither.
Neither.
Okay, gotcha.
They're 0.5 millimeter too small.
Okay, so
You need
I mean,
the axle out of the car.
It's not the right way to do it, but the worst case scenario with not having the right tools is take the axle out of the car and put it in the truer without bushings. That's
Yeah,
not the right
and a
way
bit
to
of
do
oil.
it. At least it would
Or what I've done is I've reamed out a nylon bushing 3 millimeters to work with it. And that's simple and cheap. You know, everybody's got old plastic Scalextric bushings lying around that they replace with oilites, and drill those out to 3 millimeters and insert the axle through it, and that works easily. Simple. And then use the axle that comes with the car.
But you still have the problem of getting the pulley in the middle around a 3 millimeter axle.
Yeah, you'll need a pulley that matches.
If you haven't got the right pulley, you're not going to get it done anyway.
He uses the other wheel. Use the other wheel as a pulley.
Put the wheel in the middle of the but then without a tire on it, or else it's gonna go off.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
yeah, I
You
may
get
have.
screwed when you glue it back on.
All right, let's let Courtney get his last word in, and then we're gonna hit the stop button.
No,
I just didn't
no,
want-
no, we're not gonna
Shut up, Wayne.
First of all, I'd like to start the timer. This will be 57 minutes and 38 seconds.
57 seconds is
I'm
what
going-
you have.
It's a new track record. No, I just wanted to make sure Dennis didn't leave. Dennis, I need to get in contact with Mill Conroy. I have a question for him.
Okay, well that's definitely for off the recording. Do you have something for the recording?
Yes, for Big Jim, we got a 50s proxy coming up. You have to use inline. You were using the slotted inline gears with the spacers, the modular.
Correct.
Was that because you could not trim the shaft?
Yes.
Okay. So then slotted also has a new crown gear that has the set screw on the other side. Have you seen that yet? And have you messed with it? Anybody?
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Is it just a stock
Rocket
gear?
has one or NSR has one?
No, it's instead of, the way the stock slotted crown gear is, it's got that big aluminum or brass hub.
Yeah.
This one has no hub on that side. The hub is
Oh,
on the back.
that's NSR.
That's
has
NSR.
Straight crown gear with no hub.
Okay. I'll have to look at it again.
And
All right,
that's
I've
what
seen
we're
the NSR ones.
But you
Right,
then
on
you
that
have
note,
to-
I'm going to hit the stop button. You guys keep hashing this out, and we'll do another recording next week. Everybody, bye. Bye. Here we go.